All right. Well, thank you very much for inviting me over again. And we will be talking about the mark of the beast today. It's a lot of speculation over the years. I will say, almost 2,000 years, that the book of Revelation has become the subject of speculation in regards to many things, but particularly the mark of the beast. And I am saying the book of Revelation because for those that are connected live here in this Zoom with me, if you think of where the mark of the beast referenced is only found in the book of Revelation. I've got actually the references here, so I'm not mistaken. Is six in total. So it doesn't start mentioning the book of the book of Revelation doesn't start mentioning the mark of the beast until the famous chapter 13, from verses 15 to 18. Then, still within the same kind of wave of train of thought, in the next chapter. So if you think of not chapters in between, it's pretty much the same discourse. It will be Revelation 14, 9, and 11. So 9 and 11. Then it will go again with 15, verse 2. Again, if you think that the chapters were added way after, okay, centuries after, we're looking at the same speech, the same discourse. And then again, chapter 16. So from 13 to 16 is the same discourse, same reference in term for the mark of the beast. And then it takes a little bit of a distance to Revelation 19, verse 20. And then again, Revelation 20, verse 4. And that's it. There's no more. There's actually, let's going to start allowing some people to come in. There is actually no more references in that regard. No more references of the mark of the beast. There's only 6 references in 66 books of the Bible. If you are a Protestant, and obviously 70, 72, 74, 73, if you're either Coptic or Orthodox or Catholic, or with some of the other books that belong to their canon. So 66 books of the Bible, only one has references of the mark of the beast. Out of 22 chapters, there's only 6 references, and those 6 references are just basically within very reduced number of verses. Nowhere outside of the Bible, nowhere outside of the book of Revelation, we have that expression, the mark of the beast. Nowhere else. So that in itself places us in a very interesting situation. If we were just detectives trying to resolve a crime, the evidences to find out the truth are very limited. If we need to go outside of the evidences that we have, by that I mean you need to go to other books. We need to be honest, we need to speculate. That's what we need to do. We need to speculate, and we need to do some level of we need to put some basis. And one of the bases that in hermeneutics has been used for centuries, especially ever since the canon was closed, the biblical canon was closed and restricted to a number of books. The basis of interpretation was what was called the uni-voice of the scriptures. So the word Bible means biblion, which means many books. That's what the word Bible. We take it as a book. We call it the Holy Book, as if it is a single book. We say that there is a thread from Genesis to Revelation. Paradise lost, paradise regained. And we claim to have a uni voice. So it's a uni voice between chapters, uni voice between books, uni voice between large number of authors, and yet uni voice throughout a period of time that took the complete writing of these, let's say, 66 books if you are a Protestant, or a little bit, a whole bunch more if you are Catholic, Orthodox, or Coptic. Okay, that in itself is a prerogative that we are taking. We're taking that. By we, I mean historical theologians. By we mean theologians all through centuries, all starting from the completion of the canon. And the word biblium, or multiple books, became the concept in our minds of a uni-voice book. One single book with one single voice. Now, let's go to just understand one thing, that single book concept with one single voice concept, it is something that we take as a hypothetical way in order for us to resolve doctrinal issues. So when we take from the book of Isaiah, here a little, there a little, precept here, precept there, line here, line upon line, precept upon precept, and we cut through historical context of the books, historical and theological context of the chapters, and so on, and we pick and choose verses from all throughout the book, the Bible. That hermeneutical approach, we have invented it. We have taken it on board. We have said, okay, we are going to do it this way. Okay? And this is for us something that we need to understand. When we do that, we starting with a premise that we have chosen to utilize in order to interpret concepts, in order to build up doctrines, creeds, etc., etc., etc. Now, I don't want to disappoint you, but if we study the books individually, we do see differences of voices. The most clear one I will expose now to you. Have you ever played a game in which somebody just randomly opens the Bible and he reads a text? And sometimes you don't know where that text specifically is found. You might not know the chapter. Let's say that person opens the Bible and he reads, he opens the Bible and he goes and says, the words of a wise man's mouth are gracious, but the lips of a fool shall swallow him up. You go, well, I don't know what it is, but it sounds a proverb. So it could be a proverb. It could be of the genre of a proverb. So another book with a genre of a proverb could be Ecclesiastes. So what is not going to be is Paul. And what is not going to be is the Gospels. And it's definitely not the book of Acts. And it's definitely not the book of Revelation. Why? Because if you know the Bible enough, you might not be able to pinpoint chapter, verse, and you might actually be divided between Ecclesiastes and the book of Proverbs, but you know are anywhere between those two. Same if somebody reads from the Psalms, you might not know verse and chapter or which psalm that verse is talking about, but it is from the Psalms. And then if you read something like by one man all men sin, and also by one man all men will be made whole. Now, you might not know that it's from the book of Romans, but you know it's Paul. It sounds like Paul. Now you might say, oh well, I don't know. Is it Galatians? Is it Philippians? Well, it is from Romans. But even if you don't know that it's from Romans, it is Paul. Because just the genre is different. The feeling is different. The way of expression, the theme that they're talking about, how they say it, and so on. So that's one thing, in terms of recognizing that the Bible has many voices. Now, if we go also with the uni-voice principle in terms of theology, then we also have a problem in some instances. I'm going to give you one base one. In the book of Galatians, and in fact 3 times, Paul uses the phrase, the just shall live by faith. The just shall live by faith. And he uses it 3 times. This is the basis of Protestantism. This is actually the basis of Catholicism also. And I'll explain it to you in a minute. That is a sentence that is repeated in Catholicism, as well as is a sentence that is repeated by Martin Luther. You'll say, hold on a second. Did Catholicism believe that the just shall live by faith? Yes. Did Martin Luther challenge the Roman Catholic Church, quoting precisely, the just shall live by faith? Yes, he did. Well, how can both of them be quoting the same scripture? Because what they meant by it is different. See, in the Catholic Church, the just shall live by faith of salvation every Sunday and every time that he takes the Eucharist. That's the faith that will save the just as he goes to the Mass and takes the Eucharist. And he quotes Paul from that verse. However, when Martin Luther is quoting that verse, he's quoting it, same verse, but the meaning of it is different. The meaning of it is that you are not saved by the works of the law, but by faith in Christ, not in the works of the law, but in Christ. And it definitely, and that was the challenge of Martin Luther against the Roman Catholic Church, which also used that verse. And definitely not by going to Mass and taking of the Eucharist. So they were using the same verse. Would you be surprised to know that those 3 times, Paul is very consistent, because Paul is a uni-voice within Paul. And is, in fact, saying that you are not saved by the works of the law, but by faith in Jesus Christ. And he's using a sentence that is quoting from Habakkuk in the Old Testament. So when you go to and you read Habakkuk, and you read those verses that Paul quotes, and you read those verses, the just shall live by faith. Guess what Habakkuk reckons the just is? He who follows your law, O God. So he who follows your law is just. And by faith, he believes that you will get rid of his enemies. That's how Habakkuk interprets the just shall live by faith. By keeping of the law, you become just. Not by faith in Christ, by keeping of the law. And then you shall expect the Lord to fight your battle against those that are fighting against you, and bring vengeance upon them. And you go, hold on a second. That's not how Paul uses those verses. No, he's not. In fact, Paul is using it in the opposite way. He's using it in the opposite way. Paul uses that sentence from Habakkuk, the just shall live by faith, saying that is not by the works of the law, as Habakkuk reckons, but by faith in Christ, that you are made whole and just, because you become justified by him. So what are we saying here? We have actually broken a line of a uni-voice in the theological round. Not just a univoice in the genre round, which is that's very obvious, but in the theological round, there is also issues if we take the entire scripture as a univoice, because then we'll have to ignore many, many, many things. Because it is in the Old Testament where it says that a baby should be smashed against, a baby of the Babylonians should be smashed against a stone. It is also in the Old Testament where genocide commands, directly or indirectly, by the theocracy rule of God, are being implemented. The Amalekites are being commanded to be eradicated. Young virgins are being taken as wives or as concubines by divine order. And the enemy against you, you destroyed. You destroy your enemy, but you love your neighbor Jew. If he's a Jew, you love him. If it is an enemy, he will contaminate you. So you need to keep yourself apart from them. So we cannot create a univoice when Jesus comes into the picture and says, I want you to love your neighbor and to love your enemies. So crushing the babies of your enemies against the rock is not the same voice, theologically speaking, that let the little children come to me. It's not the same thing. In fact, not just not the same thing, they're literally opposites. When he says, separate yourself, and send that person away because he's an infidel or whatever, and Jesus going to a Decapolis, and be surrendered by 5,000 people between women and children, that they're all Gentiles, because that's what Decapolis is. Decapolis is a Gentile territory. And going to people that are sick outside of the Jewish theological, moral, ethical borders, and step into centurions' houses, go through Samaria and all those things. Then the New Testament Jews, they were not doing those things out of nothing. They were doing it specifically out of something, out of precisely the law and the prophets. So why is this important in regards to the mark of the beast? Because if we are just thorough into our study of the mark of the beast, one of the things that we need to realize is that the only 6 references of this topic are only found in one book, no other. And not just that, it's a book that is a book of symbols all throughout, which means this: that in itself is challenging, because if I give you a map from Melbourne to Sydney, and if I give you the map precisely because I want you to go from Melbourne to Sydney, if you just follow the map, you will end up in Sydney if you have enough petrol in your car. However, if I give you the book of Revelation as your first book of the Bible to read, and I'll tell you to give me your conclusions at the end of the book, and if I give the same book to 100 people, they are going to be confused at anything. Now, if I give the same 22 chapters to the brightest people on earth, and we accumulate 1,000 very bright, very intelligent people, they will just be extremely confused. And if we give it to 1,000 or 2,000 theologians, they will still be giving you different answers, because not every theologian has come to the conclusion that the mark of the beast is Nero. Not every theologian has come to the conclusion that the mark of the beast is the barcode. Not every theologian has arrived to the conclusion that the mark of the beast is artificial intelligence. Not every theologian has come up to the conclusion that the mark of the beast is a Sunday law. So, that automatically we have to be careful when we just go, well, but if they were sincere, if those theologians were sincere, if those Bible students were sincere, how many people do you know that are extremely sincere Christians, they have a life to prove their sincerity? Their fruits are worthy of the most charitable individual. And yet, when they read the book of Revelation, they don't end up at the end with your same theological conclusions, or maybe the conclusions of your particular denomination. If a Jehovah's Witness reads the book of Revelation, is not going to come up with the same conclusions as a Seventh-day Adventist reading the book of Revelation. But a Catholic is not going to end up with the same solution. A Pentecostal is not going to end up with the same solution or the same outcome. And we know what happened 4 years ago. The speculation of what the mark of the beast was, especially 3 years ago, because they're going to put something on your arm, right? A very sharp thing with a fluid inside, and they're going to put it on your arm. That is going to be the mark of the beast. Remember when the barcode came up, in the late 80s or whatever it was, early 90s, the barcode. Now, I'm not saying that you believe that or I believe that, but there was definitely people that believe that. And they were very, very much sincere Christians that thought, okay, well, look, I'm not quite sure, but I'm keeping an eye on that barcode thing. I'm not quite sure, but I'm keeping an eye on that thing that they put in on people's arms, just 3 years ago. I'm not quite sure, but I'm keeping an eye on what's happening with the current conflicts in the world. And then somebody says, well, look, if you're looking into a historical perspective, bear in mind that the mark of the beast first reference in Revelation 13 also comes with a number, the number 666. How many horror movies have been done? The fight of the Antichrist, the child of the devil that is born, and he has you shave the hair and he has the 666 mark there, and things like that. The amount of speculations are amazing. And if China moves a finger, somebody will find a dragon in the book of Revelation to point it to China. But if there's a bear, or if it's a beast, somewhere in the book of Revelation, and Putin does something, they will look at Putin, they will look at their own context, their own reality, and they will find it in the book of Revelation, because that's what the book of Revelation gives you. It gives you the margin to literally be your own interpretation of your prophecy. And I'm saying that because if you are Christadelphians, you will come up with a different interpretation based on current world events. It is interesting because I've got friends that they sent me this week after the U.S. elections. They sent me a video telling me that the mark of the beast is about to be signed off in America. By that, they meant that a Sunday law is going to be signed in U.S. Congress and is going to be implemented in America and then implemented all around the world. And they sent me the video. And the video is someone telling me that. Someone that has actually interpreted the current events and the new U.S. president as the mechanism, as the means by which their concept of the mark of the beast, which is the Sunday law, is going to be signed. Now, I need to also clarify something before we continue. I've got a full study on it in Spanish, and after that Spanish study, some people wrote to me and said, "Well, but you're not telling us. You're telling us what is not, but you're not telling us what it is." So I'd rather take what I know than disregard what I know just by go nowhere. So in other words, what they sign to me is this. We believe, let's just use the Sunday law as the mark of the beast issue. So what they were saying is this. We believe that the Sunday law is the mark of the beast. I have to be honest with you, I don't. Okay? I do not believe that. And they said, you dismantle or try to dismantle the concept that the Sunday law is the mark of the beast. But you haven't given us an alternative to it. So you haven't given us something to now believe. So since you haven't given us something by which now believe or to take on board a better alternative, we are going to remain believing one that you tried to destroy it, but since you haven't given us an alternative. So my response to that will be this. Imagine yourself as a young person and you're trying to find the love of your life, the person that you want to marry with. Now, and your auntie introduced you to this girl. Now, at that point, you might not know who the love of your life is going to be, your perfect partner is going to be. But after 5 minutes, you realize that that person, that young girl that your auntie introduced to you is not. So you're not going to marry with her because you don't have a more suitable alternative. So you're not going to get, well, look, it's not perfect. It does definitely have some issues. I can see some cracks in her character. I can see that this is going to create some conflicts in my relationship. But since I don't have a better alternative, I'm going to marry her. Well, that's what those people were saying. I can understand that maybe the Sunday law might have some doctrinal issues. But since you're not providing Oscar a better alternative, I'm going to remain with this one. I think that's a very poor attitude in order to grow in knowledge, in order to grow in truth and things like that. I have discovered over the years that sometimes we do say that we want the truth, as long as the truth is not too uncomfortable. Tell me the truth. And you start saying certain things that now challenge me and my doctrines and my belief system. And then I go, okay, I don't want to hear anymore. Because you're destroying what I believe. And I will be in that land of not knowing what now I need to believe. You're destroying a person's figure. You're destroying a theological figure or whatever. And now I'm left with nothing. So I'd rather remain with something, though might be not correct 100%, than challenge myself to be in a land of finding meaning, finding something to fight for, and things like that. Okay. Now, if we follow the line of Sunday law, and for some people that listen to this outside of this Zoom meeting, they might not even be aware of what that Sunday law issue is. The Sunday law issue is in regards to an interpretation in the book of Revelation, taking outside references, both from the Bible, they will go to Ezekiel 20, they will be to Exodus 20, verse 8 with the Sabbath commandment. They will take us to Genesis. They will go here and there. They will build up kind of the thing around it without recognizing, to me, something very obvious. We're making something extremely certain out of something that only appears 6 times in the same discourse, out of the same book, that has the genre of Nostradamus writings. What do I mean? It has the genre of Nostradamus writings. If you ever read anything from Nostradamus, that's the type of genre that you see in the book of Revelation. If you ever read any books about how to interpret your dreams, and they outline dreams. So I was in here, and then this butterfly came, and this, that, and the other, and there's books written about it. That butterfly is your dead mother that is trying to send you a message, and the when you're running is because you're fearful and things like that. When you feel that you're dropping down, and you all of a sudden you wake up and things like that. That's because you're fearful of decisions. That all that genre is where the literally genre of the book of Revelation, which actually in and of itself is already challenging because it is open to interpretation, extremely open to interpretation. So if it's so extremely open to interpretation, and we are so certain that, in fact, I mentioned 6 times only in the book of Revelation, in the same discourse, the mark of the beast. But the 666, friends, you know how many times appears in the entire scriptures? Once. In Revelation 13, verse 18. Now, people might say, no, well, look, but David fought a giant that had 6 fingers and 6 toes. Yeah. And Daniel 3, in the image of Nebuchadnezzar, he was 60 feet tall and 6 feet wide. That's pushing it. That is pushing it. That is actually trying to sort of validate something. And what I have actually found out in the book of Revelation interpretation of particularly the mark of the beast and also final events, one of the things that I have found out is that most of the final interpretations, from Adventism to Southern Baptist to Catholicism to Dutch Reform interpretations on it, to Pentecostalism, to evangelicals, etc., they go there with the answer and they find the evidences after. It's like you go into a crime in which you know that you just hate the ex-husband, and you know that the ex-husband had a history of violence and so on. So you made up your mind that it was the ex-husband that killed that woman. So now you're going to find the evidence. And it should be the other way around. It should be, let's go to find the evidence and let's see where the evidence point. So I'll give you one thing. In Revelation 14, verse 6. If you go to Revelation 13, verse 6, this is just one element here. We just going to concentrate now on the mark of the beast being the Sunday law. Okay. Revelation 14, verse 16. The interpretation that builds up the case for the Sunday law as the mark of the beast is based or goes around the concept of what is called the message of the 3 angels. So the message of the 3 angels is a section in Revelation 14 from verse 6 to verse 12. We're just going to read the first one. Okay, we're going to read the first one. And it says, then I saw another angel flying in the midst of heaven, having the everlasting gospel to preach to those who dwell on the earth, to every nation, tribe, tongue, and people, saying with a loud voice, fear God and give glory to him, for the hour of his judgment has come, and worship him who made heaven and earth, the sea, and the springs of water. Okay. And then he says, and another angel that's meant to be in this theory, the second angel. Now, just a number of things here. In verse 6, when it says, then I saw another angel. If you go and you say to someone, then I saw another dog. You saw another dog, not a dog, just another dog, another bird, another lion. Yeah, another. That means that you saw one before. If you saw another, it's because the another is not the first one. but it's called the first angel. Now, historically speaking, the first angel, in those that follow the theory of the Sunday law being the mark of the beast, is that in 1830, a Baptist preacher called William Miller started preaching that the end was coming, and he came up with the date of 1843 based on his investigation or research or building up a case with verses. And in 1843, they didn't come. Jesus didn't come. Then they moved it to spring 1844. Didn't come in spring. Then came up later on in then they added more time to the 22nd of October 1844. To that we call the Great Disappointment, which is the study that we did before with you guys. The Great Disappointment. Now, the first angel repeatedly is addressed as that loud cry from 1830 to the 22nd of October 1844. That was the first angel. The references in that regard by those proponents of the theory of Sunday being the mark of the beast, that's very clear. There's plenty of references. That was the loud cry. That was the first angel. After the first angel, then comes what they call the second angel. And the second angel is where it goes, Babylon is falling, is falling, is falling. Okay? So fallen Protestantism and Catholicism, they have actually rejected the message. And continues on and on and on. Okay, now that's very, very interesting timing, because the Sabbath Sunday issue, or the Sabbath being a denominational point, a strong denominational point, does not come into the picture, or at least does not come into a denominational debate, even when it wasn't even a denomination. It was just like a group of the remnant of the Millerite movement, until 1846. So the loud cry, the first angel, is from 1830 to 1844. But the Sabbath issue, by Joseph Bates mainly, and by Seventh-day Baptist lady, Mrs. Oakes, does not come into a debate until 1846. And it does not really gain momentum until at least 10 years later, in which it becomes an identity marker, not just for the Jewish people, but this time for what later on in 1861 or 63 became the denomination of the Seventh-day Adventist. It became an identity marker. However, when they defend the Sabbath as the sign or the mark of God versus Sunday being the mark of the beast, and because Catholicism and Protestantism, any other church that was not a Seventh-day Adventist, they all worship on the Sunday, the diverting marker was Sabbath, because Seventh-day Adventists will worship on the Sabbath. The rest of the denominations mainly will worship on the Sunday, and Catholicism and Protestantism did so, and they were the ones that were in one way or another rejecting Seventh-day Adventism, and they rejected that they were a prophetic movement, and they rejected that that there was any significance on October the 2nd, 1844, and so on. That really became, within Adventism, a differentiating marker, Sabbath versus Sunday. So in order to receive a Bible study of the importance of the Sabbath versus Sunday, they will quote the first angel, because they will have a reference in verse 7 of what the first angel is talking about. It says, "Fear God and give glory to him, for the hour of his judgment has come, and worship him who made heaven and earth and sea and springs of water." For those that are familiar, in Exodus 20, with the list of what are to be known as the 10 Commandments or the 10 words, it says it has a little bit of a ringtone or genre on that expression, the God that made the heavens and the earth and the sea and so on. This reference of creation, reference of the 10 Commandments, with a particular reference to the fourth commandment. I am the Lord thy God that made heavens and earth, and so on and so on. So they said, you see, that's the mark. And that's why we're preaching it to you. Now, listen, when are you preaching it to me? Well, I'm preaching it to you. I'm giving you a Bible study in 1856. I said, okay. I'm preaching it to you in 1861. Okay. But the first angel was between 1830 and 1844. And the Sabbath was not preached ever not by William Miller, not by any of his followers. So you can't have the first angel as the ladder cry before 1844 and then claim that the Sabbath is part of the first angel when and claim that the Sabbath is part of that first angel when it was not preached from 1830 to 1844. You can't have it both ways. You can't lead the first angel as the Millerite movement, waking up the people. Lara cried, the bridegroom is coming, the bridegroom is coming. And at the same time, include the Sabbath there as the mark, when through those years, more than a decade, the Sabbath was not even preached. Now, the 666 only happens once. And to build entire doctrine out of a reference in one verse in Revelation 13, only, I mean, in the context of Revelation, the name of the number, and the number is 666. That's verse 18. That specification of the number only happens once in the entire scriptures. We have to be extremely careful, because if you know of a person that has a particular type of personality and belief, and somebody comes with one tweet from Twitter or from Instagram or from X or whatever, that it doesn't make any sense. When you have thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of tweets that never made any reference to that regard, you need to be cautious that now you're going to qualify that single tweet over a million other tweets and say, okay, well, that person is like that, and he means like this because of one single tweet. Okay? That's exactly what we're doing when we take one single episode for one single verse. This is the reference of the 666, and just only 6 other references with the same discourse of the mark of the beast. And we create an entire outline of events, starting by a Sunday law will be passed in the U.S. Congress. Then they will implement, and they will make a command to that Sunday law to be implemented in the country, the U.S. country. Not Poland, not Spain, no, the U.S. Then the next step is that it will be illegal to work on the Saturday or Sabbath. So not just that Sunday will be a day of rest, but Saturday will be forced to work. So it's not so much the Sunday resting, because even to this day, many Sabbath keepers, because of their employment, will rest Saturday, and they will rest Sunday, at least for employment. But the issue will be that they will be forced to work on the Saturday. That will happen first in the US of the USA. Then will start being implemented all around the world. Then those that refuse to follow the commands of the beast will be persecuted. Then, after being persecuted, many of them will die for their faith. Ultimately, God will preserve a remnant of the remnant of the remnant, because there's three remnants, like there's the remnant from 1844. Well, there's more remnants. Then obviously there's a apostate remnant, because there will be a shaking, and then there will be people that will die out of that remnant, and there will be a remnant that will be left, and then a ring of protection will come, and then when they are about for the final battle, as a persecution that has never seen before in the earth, the heavens will open and God will rescue his people, and there will be the 144,000. All that out of 6 references, nowhere else to be found in the scriptures. We need to be so careful. So when I'm saying I can't give you a more accurate outlined, or I can't give you a more elaborated, not accurate, because I don't think it's is correct outline anyway, but at least elaborated. I cannot give you a more elaborated plan, because that plan, it looks fantastic. Fantastic in the terms of the narrative. It looks fantastic in the terms of, you can write a book, you can make a movie out of it. In fact, movies have been made out of that. Final events and things like that. Movies have been made out of that. So I cannot compete on that. But so is the Lord of the Rings. Great books, great movies. I can't compete with that either. But that doesn't make it true, because I cannot give you an alternative, more interesting story for you to believe upon. What I'm saying is, careful, because you build an entire book with 6 verses, only extracted from a book that the genre is the same genre, those that study literature genre, that they will place Nostradamus. Same genre. And if you ever read Nostradamus, and if you would have been a person that have never read the book of Revelation, like 0, you never read it, and you don't read a reference of the 666, and you just read the book of Revelation, but you don't know that is the book of Revelation, and then they give you the some prophecies of Nostradamus, you will think it's the same thing. If you never read the book of Revelation and then you read Nostradamus, intermingle with each other, you'll think it's the same thing. That's called a genre, because they're from the same genre. And we know that every year the newspapers will start in January the 1st, 2025, and they will say, so what does Nostradamus say about the conflict in the Middle East? What does Nostradamus says about China gaining power in the world? Because you literally can reutilize that prophecy of Nostradamus year after year, because every event will fit. You can find in Nostradamus the death of your grandmother, if that's where you're going to find. So we need to understand the genre of the book of Revelation is a genre that is called it's a symbolic, prophetic genre, which you find them also outside of the scriptures. Now, when I go back to bases, though, I do have something to share with you in terms of what I go back to bases. If we're looking at a mark, okay, if we look at a mark or a sign that makes some people different to others, there is, in an agrarian society, which is the type of society that Jesus was talking to, agrarian society, you'll have animals on the field, and those animals will be marked. They will be marked by a hot iron on the side, and they will have the letter or the sign of the owner or the family that owns those animals, either be goats or bulls or lambs or whatever it is. Okay. Imagine Jesus looking at a paddock full of animals, full of animals there. How does he know which ones have the mark of God? Because remember that the mark of the beast is counteracted, or it is on the opposite side. Those that use that language from the book of Revelation is counteracted by the seal or the sign, because it's the same word, seal, sign, mark, same word. It's just translated differently in English. But the mark of the beast is translated by is counteracted by the seal. Seal, that is what you put in animals, okay, which is a mark, which is a sign, okay. That's the opposite, right? Like that's the counterattack. So God has a mark, a seal, a sign. How does Jesus know which ones are his? Because even if I don't know what the mark of the beast is, I might actually know what the mark of God is. And I know what the mark of Judaism is. I know that. The mark of Judaism is the Torah. The mark of Judaism is circumcision for males. The mark of Judaism is the kosher foods. The mark of Judaism is the Sabbath. I know what the mark of Judaism is. And they make them, or those marks make them different to everyone else, even today. And they claim that gives them special privileges from God. Okay. In fact, let's go to be honest, is their God, because for everyone else that do not carry those marks, the old Gentiles, the old pagans, they don't have the God of Israel upon them. Okay, so it's exclusive, not inclusive, very exclusive God. So those are the marks of Judaism. But what are the marks of God? What is the mark of Jesus? How will Jesus know which animals in that paddock are his? Which ones have the seal, the mark, the sign on their head? Well, Jesus says, by this you will know, and some of you already know the rest, that you are mine. So by this you will know that you are mine, if you love one another. That's the mark of Jesus. So what is the opposite of the mark of Jesus? See, if you start by the mark of the beast is Sunday, then the opposite is Saturday, right? Especially if it's a whole denomination that just claims to be so. And if your mark of identity is Saturday, then everyone else that doesn't have it will have the mark of the devil. If your mark is circumcision, kosher food, and the Torah and the Sabbath festivals and in your Jewish calendar, if that's the mark of God for you to be his and special, then those that don't have that will be the opposite. So the interesting thing is that the argument of finding Sunday is actually a default from finding the mark of God. So for a group of people, the mark of God is Saturday. Therefore, as a reaction to it, Sunday has to be the mark of the beast. So in other words, you find the solution and then you're trying to find the proofs. So if you are a Jewish person and what makes you special and the sign that God is upon you and your people is the Torah, Sabbaths in plural also, circumcision and kosher, then by default, whatever is not that will be the mark of the devil. So the opposite will be mark of the devil. Okay, those that don't have the Sabbath, don't have, okay. So we do the same thing then. Because Jesus will find his people, and we know he will find his people, or we know that he will find his mark on the people that that somehow are not necessarily of the circumcision. We know that. Because he says so, right? Because he walks through Samaria, because he said to the Samaritan woman, neither here near in Jerusalem, but you will worship God in spirit and in truth. We know that because he healed Romans, he healed Gentiles, he healed Greeks. We know that. So it cannot be circumcision. It cannot be kosher, because we know that that he was very very challenging kosher establishment for the Pharisees. We know it's not the Sabbath, and we know it's not the Sabbath because he commanded to do things on the Sabbath that were forbidden by law to do so. Today, there's people not cutting the lawns on the Sabbath, or not like around my neighborhood. Now we've got this collection this time of the year where you put all this old furniture and things like that, and they come in on Monday to collect it. So I got today and tomorrow to bring the stuff on the edge of my house, and the big truck will come. All of the neighbors are already waking up early today and do so. So I'm not going to carry weight on the Sabbath, but Jesus did make himself into trouble, or place himself into trouble, because of the Sabbath, because he asked people specifically, carry your bed. Specifically, he did say so. Specifically. So we know he's not that. We know that he healed on the Sabbath. We know that the reason why he healed Peter's mother-in-law's sickness on the Sabbath, the rest wait outside until the Sabbath was over. That wasn't Jesus holding back. That was the rest holding back because of their neighborhood where they were living. They were Jewish people. That's why they didn't ask for their healings. They wait until the Sabbath was over. But Jesus didn't have a problem healing on the Sabbath. It was the people. So we know it's not the Sabbath. We know it's not kosher. We know it's not circumcision. Paul confirms it, that it's not the circumcision. Okay? So if Jesus says, by this you will know that you're mine, if you love one another. So what will be the mark of the devil? It'll have to be the opposite. Envy, disliking that person, not giving the liberty to that person that you want for yourself. It is interesting because in religious liberties, those that claim religious liberties, what they're really claiming is, I want religious liberty for myself, but not for that gay person to say whatever he wants to say, not for the atheist guy to have a public platform to say his heresies, not for that university professor to say things contrary to my beliefs. I want freedom of distributing my stuff. That's not freedom of opinion. That's freedom of your opinion. And what Jesus says is, no, you need to make sure that you love your enemy and you love your neighbor as you love yourself. So if you think that that if you follow the political party with the red colors, you don't go around pulling off the signs of those that believe that the blue colors are better. You don't go around taking their signs all the stickers out of the cars, or crashing their windows and things like that. Because your political freedom, your religion freedom is theirs. We need to defend the religious freedom of the other people that don't believe the same thing that I do. That's defending religious freedom. So the opposite will be those that are very much exclusive, that we better than the others, that definitely, I don't know if you notice, if you following some of the U.S. elections, if you notice that in the U.S. elections, at the same time, you have people that will be very much against abortion, the unborn child, very much against abortion, and at the same time, very much about tanks from the IDF, Israeli Defense Force, crashing the bones of thousands of dead children in Gaza at the same time. So, yes for the abortion, but no for the children that are already here. And that goes on and on and on and on in so many contradictions. And if you think opposite, they will cancel you, they will report you, they will report your channel on YouTube, they will put a block, they will write letters, they will this, that, and the other. So their religion freedom, their political views, worldviews, and so on, they want their freedom for themselves, not from someone else. Well, that's the mark of the beast. Why? Because it's opposite to if you love one another. If you love one another. So when religious denomination is invited by one of his pastors are invited to a Buddhist temple and goes and said, so let's say a Buddhist temple invites a Protestant pastor from a particular denomination, you choose one. That denomination will publish the good news because they're inviting one of our pastors to one of their temples to speak to us about Jesus for the next 30 minutes. And then you ask yourself the question, would that denomination invite one of the priests of that temple to talk about Buddha in their pulpits? Oh, no way. No way. That will be heresy. So we published on our newspapers, denominational newspapers, such and such pastor has been invited to a convention, among Buddhists to talk about Jesus. But we will not rent our church on Sunday because Baptists are going to have approached us. They don't have a place of worship. They have invited, they have asked us if they will pay rent since we don't use the church on Sunday, if they can use it on Sunday. So not even on the same day that we worship. No, on Sunday. Oh, no. Because somehow from this holy temple, for this holy pulpit, they're going to say something else. And it's going to, the demons of the enemy are going to come here and things that we live in. It's under so much superstition that it's just unbelievable. So what is the opposite of the identifying mark of Jesus, which is, by this the world will know that you are my disciples. So if you go to Galatians 5, and we're finishing with this, and then we open the microphones. In Galatians 5, we actually see that mark of Christ manifested in the fruit of the Spirit, which is love. Love one another, and that is manifested by joy, peace, long-suffering, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. Against such there is no law. That goes the power of the Torah. So, and those who are Christ have crucified the flesh with his passions and desires. If we live in the Spirit, let us also walk in the Spirit. So what is the opposite of that? The opposite of that is just a few verses before. And it says, for the flesh lusts against the Spirit, and the Spirit against the flesh. And these are contrary to one another. So what is contrary to love one another? The contrary to love one another is these evidence, which are adultery, fornication, uncleanness, lewdness, idolatry, sorcery, hatred, contentions, jealousies, outbursts of wrath, selfish ambitions, dissensions, heresies, envy, murders, drunkenness. Remember when he says murders, that Jesus said, if you insult somebody, you even if you call him you fool, you're not loving him, isn't it? Drunkenness, rivalries, and the like. And the like is a way of Paul saying, etc., 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 etc. You know, if you dislike someone, if you're gossiping against someone, if you think that you are more special than someone else, etc., etc., etc. So with that list, etc., 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 whoa, how many are claiming to have the mark of the beast because they have a day in particular they supposed to be keeping as the mark, but they actually showing all the evidences that the world would not recognize as a disciple of Christ? Okay, so I haven't given you the alternative of what the Sunday law is in terms of outlines. I have given you, where the rubber hits the road, at the very raw basis. The mark of God is if we love one another. The mark of the opposite of Spirit of God will be the opposite of loving one another, whatever that takes the form of. Okay. All right. Well, do we have any questions? Do we have any comments? Do you want to have a little bit of a discussion through this?